In this lesson, we're going to talk about two-step inequalities. Let's take a look at the first example here. So just like in the last lesson, we talked about how the variable needs to be on the left-hand side in order to graph it, determine the interval, and set notation. So you can either move the variable at the very beginning or you can do it at the very end. Personally, my preference is the very end, but if you were to do it in the beginning, it would look something like this. I would take my negative 24 and then my negative 9x and my symbol and then my negative 6. And I literally just turned the whole problem around. So what that will do is it will result with a variable on the left-hand side. But I'm going to go ahead and do that at the very end. So let's go ahead and solve this two-step inequality. Just like in an equation, if I were to solve this, I would go ahead and I would move my negative 24 to the other side by adding 24 to both sides. And then I would go ahead and solve the actual inequality. Negative 6 plus 24 is going to give me 18. I'm going to bring down my symbol greater than. My 24s cancel out, and I'm left with negative 9x. Okay, now that's one step. Now, let me go ahead and change my pen color. Let's go ahead and change it to green. Step 2, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 9. Now, remember our rule for inequalities. When you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So this example, we have to flip the sign over. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish what the problem is. 18 divided by negative 9 is negative 2 is less than x. Okay. Now that I finished my problem and x is by itself, now I'm going to go ahead and do that turning mechanism. I'm going to go ahead and turn it around. X is greater than negative 2. And if you started with that original problem up here that we were talking about, you wouldn't have needed to do that little turnaround at the end because it would have already been turned around. Okay, now let's go ahead and graph it on our number line. I'm going to start with my 0 in the center. The number that is in my inequality, which is negative 2, and then its additive inverse, which is 2. All right, now I want to go ahead and answer my interval notation. My interval notation is going to be, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish graphing it. Hello. X is greater than negative 2. I need an open circle on negative 2, and I'm going to move it in the right direction with an arrow. Now my interval notation. I'm going to go ahead and start at negative 2, and negative 2 is not included. And I'm moving in the positive infinity direction. My set notation will be x such that x is greater than negative 2. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and let's try the next problem. I'll go back to my blue. Okay, in this step, it's actually kind of like a 3-step, but that's okay. The point I wanted to get across in this one is distributing. We have to distribute, so let's go ahead and distribute. 30 is greater than or equal to negative 5a minus 50. You can go ahead and consider that as one step. But if you didn't, here's now your real nice two-step inequality from here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 50 to both sides. And that's going to give me 80. It's greater than or equal to negative 5a. And my 50s are going to cancel out. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more step here. I'm going to go ahead and change my pen color to green to show you that second step. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. Okay, when I do that, I divided by a negative 5 again, so I'm going to go ahead and flip that sign over, and I'm actually going to do it right over here. And I'm going to be left with negative 16 is less than or equal to a. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it around, so a is greater than or equal to negative 16. And now I'm going to go ahead and graph it. I have a 0, negative 16 and 16, and I have greater than or equal to negative 16, and I'm moving to the right. Okay, my interval is going to be bracket negative 16, comma, positive infinity. My set notation, careful here, it's going to be an A. So A such that A is greater than or equal to negative 16. All right, let's try these two. All right, these two are, they have some fractions in them now. So let's go ahead and work with problems with fractions. All right, just like in a one-step inequality or two-step inequality, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the number that's not part of the fraction first. So let's go ahead and subtract 8 first. There we go. I have b over 2 is greater than or equal to 4. Okay, that's one step. Now if I were to tack on the next step here, I'm going to multiply by 2. And since I'm multiplying by a positive 2, I'm not going to flip that sign. So b is greater than or equal to 8. All right, I'm going to go ahead and graph it. So I have 0, I have 8, and I have negative 8. And I have a closed circle on 8, and I'm moving to the right. My interval is going to be bracket 8, comma, infinity. Set notation, b such that b is greater than or equal to 8. Okay, another fraction type of problem. Let's go ahead and try this one. This time I have one number in the denominator, and then I have my variable and another number in the numerator. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply by that denominator, negative 5. Now, here's our rule. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. So I'm going to do that immediately, the minute I acknowledge that. So my 5's cancel out, or my negative 5's cancel out. Y minus 4 is less than 60. And I'm going to go ahead and finish it off with my second step. And I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I have y is less than 64. All right, I have a 0. I have my 64, negative 64. And I'm going to have an open circle on 64, moving to the left. My interval is going to be negative infinity up to 64. That's not included. And my set notation, y such that y is less than 64. Okay, let's try a more challenging two-step. Now I have some fractions. Not too bad. All right, just like in a regular inequality, we're going to start by eliminating that number that's not with the variables. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 2/9 to both sides. Just working with fractions now, that's all. Okay, my 2/9 go ahead and cancel out, and I'm left with 4/9 m is greater than or equal to 1/9. All right, now I like to do this next step all in one. I'm going to multiply both sides by 4/9, the reciprocal of that, which is 9/4. Watch what happens here. My 9's cancel out, and my 4's cancel out, and I'm left with m. I did not multiply by a negative number, so I do not need to flip that sign. And then I have 1/9 times 9/4, and that's going to give me 1/4. All right, so there's my inequality. Let's go ahead and graph it. 0, 1/4, negative 1/4. I have a closed circle on 1/4. And I'm moving to the right. My interval notation is going to be bracket 1/4, comma, infinity. And my set notation is going to be m such that m is greater than or equal to 1/4. All right, there are our two-step inequalities.